That's right. Good afternoon, everybody. Got Penny right here with us. She's been inspecting the chief, making sure he was it was okay for him to come on the air with us here today. And today, my very special guest is Police Chief TJ Chaudion. I have known TJ for many, many years. We were talking about whether you could grow facial hair back then or not.
I think the first time me and you did a show together, I could not grow facial hair. And I think that's probably been 20-something years ago that we actually did our first radio show. So it's always good to see you 20-plus years later. And the only person that wasn't around then was Penny, but we were both around. And it's always an honor to be here with you and be a part of your show.
Absolutely. Well, welcome back to Meet Me at the Diner. I am so glad that you're here this afternoon. You know, there's so many opinions about policing today, but today's conversation, I hope, is not going to be about opinions, but it's going to be about information, because one thing we all would like to have, I think, is information. So my goal is to help our listeners better understand what your department does every day and answer some of the questions and maybe some of the rumors that are out there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that's probably one of the biggest things. It's and I tell people this all the time, but as a chief, the hardest thing for me is to sit back and see people spreading untruths or spreading stuff that they hear and they're not a part of. And then as a chief, you're kind of expected, hey, you're professional. You can't get in that rumor mill. You can't get into all that other stuff. So
it's hard to hold back, though, sometimes, isn't it?
It's tough. It's tough, Miss Ann. It's tough.
I know.
But I think there's a lot of misinformation. But there's people out there who live their life. I think they're just miserable people, and they want to make as many people miserable as they can. And, social media and gossip pages and stuff like that is one of those ways they can do that. And they can be anonymous so people don't know who really they are at church on Sunday. So
Keyboard warriors.
And we got to, I tell people it's not everybody. It's that same little group that you deal with all the time. The same group I've been dealing with since I've been chief, and if you got 23,000 people in our city and there's only about 7 or 10 of them that spread those kind of rumors, I think we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, that's true. So, speaking of being in policing for as long as you have been, TJ, how has policing changed over the last 5 to 10 years?
Oh, wow. Most of it's technology. The amount of technology that's changed from even the last 10 years has been remarkable. Between the drone systems and the flock camera systems and, the new car systems that's inside the vehicles and the body cams and all these things, and they keep getting better and better. So, even reality, when body cams first came out, you couldn't hardly see anything.
It was
very grayish, you couldn't. And now it's like, if you were recording for a TV show, and it's just good footage, it catches everything. So, that part we're happy with, because, the body cam for us, it protects so many of us and keeps us from being accused wrongly of stuff that they say we do or we don't do. So that's important to me. And I tell anybody, I would not police the streets today without a body cam. That's one of the most, just because that people, it shows everybody, one, of who I am and what I'm doing and how I do my job. And 2, it keeps anybody from coming up making a false complaint, because, 3 weeks ago, I had a person come up and wanted to complain on an officer, said the officer was rude. And I said, okay. I said, no problem. I said, have a seat. Let's take a look, because they all got body cams. So if they were dealing with you, then we got body cams. And they said, well, I doubt they turned it on. I said, no, ma'am, because our body cams record regardless of whether they reach up and turn it on.
That was a question I was going to ask you. Can an officer turn it off?
Yeah, well, now the officer can physically turn it off.
Okay.
But even if they turn it off, it's still recording. So we can go back and create an event and actually pull up that type of video and where that video is.
Okay.
So, and that's one of the safeguards we have, just in case, because if you're responding to a call and it's a hot call, let's say you got somebody and they say shots are being fired and somebody's been shot, and you're pulling up. When you turn on the blue lights, your body cam automatically comes on. So that way you don't forget to reach up and turn it on.
Okay.
So anytime you're responding, if me and you's at the scene together and I reach up and turn my body cam on, it automatically turns yours on.
Really?
Yes. So those
are...
So
it's a Bluetooth technology type thing.
Yes, ma'am. So it helps. So when you're in the mix of having something really bad that you're trying to deal with, that, God, I forgot to turn on my body cam, because if you turn on the blue lights to respond to that call, your body cam's already going to be on. And we train our officers and teach our officers to turn it on as they're going to the scene, instead of waiting until they get to the scene. But if they turn the blue lights on, their camera automatically comes on. Once they get to the scene, any officer that walks up to them or by them, if they forgot to turn theirs on, it automatically turns it on too. So those are some safeguards that we have in place. It's been very useful for us.
I bet a lot of people don't know that.
Well, most people don't. Most people just, and it's like the woman who come up and complained. I said, "Oh, no, ma'am, we're going to have it on body cam video." And then she said, "Well, I got to go, and I need to go." And I'm like, "Well, hold on, ma'am, it's easy for me to pull up body cam." I said, because we research them all the time and we look at them all the time and we do random checks, so we can pull it up. And she left, and then I did went ahead and watched the body cam footage, and of course the officer wasn't rude to her. I think she was a little upset because she got a couple of tickets and thought that might, I guess, complaining on the officer might get him back, for writing her some tickets. But unfortunately, we've had that before. We've had people go in front of city council and complain, and we're able to pop up the body cam and say, "Nope, here's the actual story. Live and in person, here you go." So it helps officers out and it helps us out. And it's no he said, she said type of thing, or you're only believing them because they're law enforcement. So there's a lot out there that the body cam's important for us.
Now, they have just, I believe, I remember reading this, they've just passed a law about the distance that people can be in recording something. Is that right?
Well, I don't think it's fully passed. I think it's still in there. But I hadn't seen it come across as being passed. But
they're signed into law. Yeah.
They're trying to do a thing that Florida, I think North Carolina, maybe Georgia. It's basically, there's no issues with people recording the police. Matter of fact, anytime I see somebody recording me, I always say, "Thank you, because you're protecting me." Where it gets problematic is if I'm dealing with somebody inside of a car, and every car I pull over, I don't know what's going on in the car until I get up there and start asking questions. And, and it could be just a routine call, don't mean nothing. But if I'm dealing with that and then I got somebody coming up behind me, I don't know what their intention is either. So it keeps them to keep a distance from us and not interfere with walking up, or if you're the person being on the traffic stop, for them walking up, putting in both of our faces, it kind of just gives us a little bit of leeway to say, "Hey, you got to step back. And if you don't step back, we're going to charge you with interfering with us." I think that's a good law. I do like, it's not a fact to keep you from recording. It's to keep you from walking up to the officer and getting the officer's face and putting the camera on his face.
Putting them at risk if something happened to that guy that was sitting in the car and he saw an opportunity. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yes. And what people don't know is people always think what it's like, and we get a lot of, you was talking earlier about the rumor mills and stuff like that. In reality, as you're a police officer, every call you go on is a different call, and you never know what you're going to get. Some of my worst calls and some of my worst fights that I've been in have always been on routine calls, that stopping somebody with the headlight out or something like that, and it turned into the person has a gun in their waistband, or there's a bunch of drugs in the car, and the next thing you know, the person might be wanted for something, and then now you got a fight on your hands, and it's you and him out there, you're on the side of the road, and you have to defend yourself. And people ask me about use of force all the time, and I tell people, man, use of force, it's never pretty. There's nothing pretty about use of force, but I 100% expect every one of my officers to go home at the end of the day. And we know that violence is a part of this job, and that sometimes people are going to try to hurt us, and I expect our officers to be able to defend themselves. And we try to give them the equipment necessary to be able to do that with the least amount of force needed.
Well, speaking about that, since we're on this topic, had to be, I know it was an absolutely horrific day with DJ Killer.
Yeah, it's probably, that's one of them things that as a police leader in any type of leadership role, you pray and hope that don't ever happen. Unfortunately, I had to deal with it. I had some great officers throughout my career. I mean, I have some great officers that I think took me from being a good police officer to a really, what I consider a great police officer. But none of them ever taught me how to deal with the emotional part of losing an officer. None of them ever taught me what's it going to be like when you go in front of that wife and tell that spouse, "Hey, your husband's, I know he left this morning, and I know y'all, went fishing and camping this past weekend, but guess what? He's never coming back home again." And, You know, I think when I probably should have waited to do a press release because a lot of that was still in my mind and it kind of choked me up a little bit. You don't like to get up there. You want to be strong for your officers and stuff. But, you know, that was tough, and that was a tough day. And, you know, it's a day that I don't forget. Yesterday, we actually, a bunch of officers went to Allie and Ella's school and took Ella and walked her in on her first day, because that's what DJ did when he was with us. He would walk her in on her first day so she wouldn't be as nervous. So a bunch of officers, of course, took his place yesterday and walked her in. So those are always tough situations, but it's situations we're not going to let what he's done in his life stop us from what we do, and his memory and just the great thing that he done. When you take an officer who keeps food in his truck and his patrol car and just stops randomly and gives it to people and puts it in the blessing boxes, those are the type of people you're looking for to be police officers, because those are people who care about the community. And that's what we had when we had DJ. And you wish, you know, if I had 100 DJs working for the police force, you know, they probably wouldn't even need me. You know, the police department would run itself. We hire humans, and humans make mistakes, but at the same time, it does take a special person to be able to do this job. And the care part, you know, protect and serve. You know, I always say protect's easy because a lot of people like to protect. You know, they makes them feel good. You know, the serve and the care part is sometimes what we have to make sure they have in them before we hire them. And that's why it takes so long for us to get hired. And, you know, I think you were at the meeting that I had not long ago, and I was telling the group that we had 100 applications last year and we only hired 7 people. So 7%. And you take 100 applications and 93 of them didn't get through and only 7 did. And that's what's important to me, is making sure we get the right fit. And I spoke to a group of chiefs and sheriffs not long ago. It's been probably about 6 months ago. And one of the things I told them was, the reason you're seeing so much stuff happening right now in law enforcement, and you're seeing officers get themselves caught up in bad stuff. If you look when they were hired, most of these people were hired when we were going through the George Floyd episode, and some of the other episodes was putting law enforcement at a bad angle and making people think all law enforcement was bad. And, you know, so that small group, they were the loudest. So a lot of people didn't want to go in law enforcement. So a lot of departments started lowering their standards trying to bring these people in because they needed officers. And if you look, a lot of them still, if you look at big departments like New York and Portland and Seattle, some of those, they're at all-time lows about officers.
Those are also cities that are not law enforcement friendly.
Absolutely. And it's, in those cities, there's a lot of times, and I always tell people, I don't like to give my opinion on a lot of cases that I see, because you never know all the evidence unless you watch the trial. And then I think if you watch the trial, then you should be able to, you can give your opinion, your expert opinion at that point. But there's a lot of information that's not released, so it's kind of hard because you kind of get into that. Well, if he did this and this was there, then, he's justified. But if that wasn't there, then, he might not have been justified. So you really never know until you have all the evidence. And usually by watching the court case, then you get a better idea of all the evidence that they have. But
well, I think it's a lot like the military. The military was definitely in a downward swing, and now it's in an upward swing. People are wanting to go into the military. So it always comes down, in my opinion, to the same thing: leadership. Absolutely.
100%. That's when you got a group of guys that want to work for you, that want to be a part of what you're establishing, that's what makes this job great. And that's why I think a lot of us that's probably can get out of it and maybe move on to something else, we stay in it because we do care. We care about this department. Is like a family to me. This is where I grew up. This is where I done a lot of stuff I probably shouldn't have done, but I was all about I got to get the bad guy right. I always wanted to be first. I always wanted to lead the department in tickets. I always wanted to lead the department in arrests. I always wanted to lead the department in calls for services. And I think that when you have that mentality, and then it kind of just goes down to your officers, and when they see you, like I don't drink, so I don't go to bars, I don't go to restaurants, and I don't drink alcohol. So, but if I was to go out and drink every Friday and Saturday night, what would that show to my officers? You know, I mean, you're not being a leader at that time. You're being a bad influence. And and it's the same way with marriage. It's the same way with a lot of stuff. You know, you want them to be able to look up to you and stride. When I worked for Gerald Brooks, I looked up to Gerald Brooks, and I wanted to be like Gerald Brooks because he carried himself in such a way you never, ever had to worry about anything. You know, you didn't have to worry about somebody calling and saying, hey, Chief got arrested for DUI. Chief got arrested for, domestic violence. I mean, you knew that because of the type of person he was. And that's the kind of leader that I want to be.
Well, I think you are accomplishing the mission. I think you are accomplishing the mission. As far as I know, you're accomplishing
I'm trying.
the mission.
I'm doing the best I can, I promise you.
How has your team, I'm going to say your team, now having had DJ gone for a good while, how are they doing now?
You know, I think things are starting to get back to normal. One of the first things I want to make sure is that we didn't slow down. You know, we were making good progress right there when we lost DJ. So we wanted to make sure that we continued that to show our civilians and our citizens and our community that, hey, we're going through a devastating time, but that's not going to stop us from doing our job. We're still going to put bad people in jail. We're still going to protect our community. We're going to serve our community. And everything that come out of that, you know, I never like to say there's anything positive that comes out of such a tragic event, but I think I told you earlier, I've received over calls, letters, and stuff like that. I've received over 1,000. There's not a state in South Carolina that some police department hadn't sent me something
a county or a state in the union?
The whole state of the United States.
Right.
So I've gotten something from every single state, you know, just giving their condolences, just, you know, telling us whatever we need, they pray for us. You know, we had a lot of agencies reach out to us in South Carolina and say, hey, you know, if you need us to come down and work while y'all attend the funeral and stuff like that. So we were able to get all that accomplished. And, you know, it just reminds you of the great people that's out there and why you do this job. You know, when this DJ first happened, I went home and I told my wife, I said, I think I'm through. I think this is it for me. You know, I don't want to ever have to tell another lady that her husband's not coming home. I don't want to ever have to tell another child that their father's not coming home or their mother's not coming home. So for me, it was, you know, I've just felt like maybe it's time for me to get out. But after I went through everything and I said, well, I got to take my department through, right? I got to take all these people through and make sure we get through this and we finish.
You know, there's always a reason to keep
always
going.
A reason.
Right? Always. Even when you say you're going to quit,
yes.
There's always a reason.
But I will say the amount of support that we got from our citizens in Greenwood, I've never seen anything like it before. And I don't think I'll ever see anything like it again. It was the amount of people who reached out, the amount of people that came a part of us, and it just felt like there was a lot more than, you know, 55 officers that was involved in this thing. This was a community, 87,000 people coming together and saying, you know, we're here for you, whatever we can do. It was amazing.
Do you think that was a turning point in the violence? Because we started out the first of the year with really quite a bit of violence. It does. I mean, I know there is still some, but do you think it has pulled back some?
I think it had a lot to do with it. And when something tragic like that happens, what you get is you get a lot of people saying, we're going to step up and we're not going to allow it. So when we see something, we're going to call and say something.
Have you seen more of that?
And we've definitely seen a lot. Even some of our neighborhoods that we used to not get a lot of those calls about, we have gotten a lot of calls picked up. And I think that's a lot also to dedicate to our ACE team who goes out into the community with the video game trailer and, you know, and does the popcorn and the snow cones and stuff like that. That has a lot to do with it too, but it's really, and most of it is, I tell people, community gets fed up with crime. And when they get fed up with it and they decide we've had enough, that's the way you stop crime. And, you know, we're going to talk about technology. I know that's part of our questions. And technology is some great things out there that we absolutely love, that helps us tremendously, but nothing helps you more than a community. The community is the key to solving crime.
You know, back in the day, we used to have National Night Out
Mm-hmm.
here in Greenwood. Do you know today is National Night Out Day?
Yep. And you know, everybody used to do it at the same time.
Yes.
And now you got different departments that does it. Some of them will do it last week, some of them next week, some of them.
But it was so great
It
when
was-
everybody did it. And I can remember riding around, I think with Sonny Cox, going to all the different places, all the different communities.
Yeah, and that was, that was a time when the community come out, and the whole point of National Night Out was for community to come together, introduce yourself to your neighbors, talk with your neighbors, and y'all be one together for your neighborhood. And we've lost a lot of that, and some of that I think has to do with technology because, although you have a lot of groups that have their own social media accounts for their neighborhoods and stuff that they text stuff, it's not like when you would go check on your neighbor and knock on the door and say, hey, just checking on you, or hey, I knew you were sick, so I'm bringing you some, soup or whatever. I think that stuff is the stuff we miss, that face-to-face interaction. So a lot of people, they come home and, they just want to go inside, be to themselves, and that community engagement we're just not seeing like we used to see.
Oh, it's like kids playing outside, right?
That was so good.
Yeah, the same type of thing. I just thought I would mention that because it's National Night Out today, and that was a good thing for the community. But one of the things that you brought up was the flock cameras. There's a lot of social media buzz about why, and what is the purpose, and why should we have them? What do you want to talk about to
Well,
them?
I think a lot of it's not understanding what the system is and what the system's capable of doing. Now, there might be some systems out there that's more advanced than what we have. Most people don't understand. We've had flock cameras since 2020. And started with them.
Well, it's because you didn't tell anybody.
Well, no, we
that's-
didn't. We did not tell people. But in 2019, we kind of started putting them in. And currently, we have in the city of Greenwood, we have 35 flock cameras, and these cameras are put up in areas that we know by data that has a high crime area. Some areas are areas that when we have situations, when we first asked for the flock cameras, people don't realize 2019 was one of the worst years we've had for shootings in Greenwood. In the history of Greenwood, as long as I've known, we've never had as many shootings that we had in 2019.
How many did we have?
We had, I know it was well over 100. Now,
100?
we consider anything that does with the firearm being discharged as a shooting. So that's where you get a lot. So you're like, oh yeah, but if it's a suicide, that's a shooting. If it was a suicide by a firearm, if it's an accidental shooting, that still went in as a firearm, gun violence. And if somebody and it amazes me how many people just want to walk outside and just throw a couple rounds up in the air. I'm like, have you lost your mind? But it happened all the time. So 2019, we looked into the flock system, and Chief Brooks was the chief at the time, and we really said, all right, went to council, gave our proposal. Our biggest issue with gun violence was drive-by shootings. It was real quick, right? So the two shootings that we have unsolved in 2019, 2018, those are our last two unsolved shootings. Both of those were drive-by shootings. Both of those today, if we had the flock camera system, we would have got the car who done it based on where it happened at.
Now, what is a flock camera?
So a flock camera is what it does is it's a system that's set up in a certain location. It's a permanent system. It don't rotate. It don't move. Anytime a car comes by, it flashes and take a picture of the tag. It don't take a picture of the driver. It don't take a picture of the speed. It can't, tell you of what's going on around it or what music's playing or who's driving or anything like that. The only thing it does is it takes a picture of the tag. And I think where a lot of departments are having issues with the flock camera system is the fact that they don't have good policies and procedures in place. And you see a lot of people, for us, we have stuff set in place that when somebody runs something in flock, especially a tag, one is they have to put in the reason why along with the case number, and that comes to us. So if we see somebody that's running tags and they're checking tags like for the entire city and seeing where that vehicle's been all over the city, then we're going to say, why are you running this tag? What does it have to do with this case?
Who can run the tags?
Well, it can be any sworn officer. We do have it, so we only share our camera system with other agencies in South Carolina. Now, you'll find a lot of agencies share all over the United States. In Greenwood, we only share with the state of South Carolina, SLED, some of the others. But even if somebody else uses our cameras, it lets us know. So let's use SLED, for example. So if SLED uses our camera system, it gives us a thing and says, SLED checks your cameras for this tag. So those are the things. And people think, well, if something happens, it automatically, because you'll have some departments that have this thing called shot stop, shot stopper. So whenever this system hears of a gunshot, the cameras move in that direction and it starts automatically recording everything. And I think that's where it gets a little, you're kind of invading. Because right now, all the flock cameras, if you can sit there with your phone, wherever flock camera we have is, and you can take a picture of every single car that comes by, bam, 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 bam. And it absolutely shows, because that's what the general public can see. And there's no expectation of privacy. And phones are different, because the Supreme Court's ruled that when you're dealing with phones and you're going to search a phone, then you need a search warrant, which
right.
We've always got search warrant for phones anyway. But for the flock camera system, I think it's just a lot. The information in there is only held for 30 days, and then it goes out. That's Greenwood City's data, right? So none of that data is sold. None of that data is given to anybody else. If anybody else tries to use our cameras for anything, it's run straight through us. The only people who have access to our cameras is sworn law enforcement officers, and then we can keep a good tally on it. And a lot of that's got to do with your policies and procedures. We see, especially right now, because there's so many negative things coming out about flock. But there is no doubt in my mind, when you look from 2019 all the way up until now, the amount of drive-by shootings we've had is not even comparable. The amount of the Longshore case that was over there at Uptown Grill, flock camera gave us the car. Then we was able to follow that car. The flock camera don't make the case. The officer and good police work make the case. The flock camera just gives you a lead that you can go with.
Now, let me ask you something. Can you actually put into the system that you're looking for this tag, and if that has been seen on the flock system,
Correct.
It will come up?
Correct. So if you, like when we go to an incident and the person says, hey, look, this blue car just drove by here and shot 4 rounds, and then we can take our cameras and say, well, let's break it down to what time it happened. And they say it's a blue Toyota. And we can put in the flock system, show us all blue Toyotas. And then we can kind of go from there. And now we got a lead, right? Now we got a lead to follow up for the blue Toyotas to see if any of those matches. And most of the time it's people we know, these shootings, they're involved in other shootings themselves, and then they're the victims of shootings, and then it retaliates, which is what happened to us in April that people were, upset about, and which I was upset about too. But those are the reasons why you look at that stuff, that we don't have people just randomly getting shot. We don't have businesses getting robbed and, stuff like that happening. And then so many people get confused about city and county because so many people comment on our social media post about what you doing about this, what you doing about that. It don't even have anything to do with us. That's the county. And vice versa on the county. I'll see stuff on the county social media and it'll say something about a case and I'm like, the county don't have nothing to do with that. That's the city. So people get kind of confused with that. And that's
you
not
work together with the county?
Oh yeah, we have a joint SWAT team. We have a lot of joint stuff that we work together. Narcotics, of course, we work very well with them. But of course, we also work. We have an FBI agent. We have a ATF agent. That's all part of our narcotic task force that we work hand in hand with. So there's a lot of aspects. SLED is a big program that we work with all the time. Sometimes I'll just call them in and say, hey, can we do some alcohol buys or something like that, where we'll send people in and try to purchase underage alcohol or look at underage drinking. So we work hand in hand with several different agencies.
Mm. So, I think you've kind of explained how they're used in criminal investigations. What safeguards are in place for privacy?
Yeah, well, for us, is the main thing is having good policy and procedures. You can't use our system for anything that's personal. It has to be related to a crime.
Like whether that man is running around on you or something?
That's the key. And I would almost bet that every single person that's got in trouble with the flock, every officer's got in trouble with the flock system, I guarantee you they were looking to see what their wife or significant other was out doing and where their car was hitting on, which is a big no-no. But that would be the same thing if you run somebody's driver's license without having a reason, like you ran your girlfriend's driver's license to see, what she was doing. Or, all of our officers have DMV access in their cars. So if you see a vehicle at your girlfriend's house and you run the tag number, oh, well, you're in a lot of trouble, because that's not policy. It's not law enforcement.
It's not police
Yeah,
business.
it's not that type. You're doing it for personal gain. So a lot of people, and I know a lot of officers, I don't know for sure why they was running the tags they ran, but I'm almost positive that's probably what it is.
Yeah.
But the most thing is people don't realize how much it helps us. And, Greenwood's not, immune from crime. If you look back in the 80s, one of the worst crimes we've ever had was when the girl got kidnapped at Georgetown Apartments, the old Georgetown Apartments. I think it's called something else now. But that little girl got kidnapped in her own apartment complex. And based on where we have flock cameras set up right now, we would have got all the vehicles that come in and out of there. And that would have gave you something to lead. And here you are, and you got parents that's lived through this tragic incident. It took several years to end up kind of understanding what happened, and the person that was just driving through from out of town, from Georgia actually, that was coming through. So, and then, just probably not 6 months ago, we had a person who had their lawn trailer. They had all their lawn equipment, all their machinery on it, tractors on it and stuff. All that was stolen. And within 24 hours, we'd already tracked down the person, got the trailer back with all the stuff, and then charged the person. So, it does have its good, and I understand people get concerned with it, and that's why you have to have good policies and procedures. You have to have stuff
So how
in
did
place.
you come up with so what are there standards out there that the government or somebody has come up with, or
Yeah.
how do you come up with this?
Well, anybody who's actually, and that's the good thing about us being CALEA certified, and we've talked about that in our previous speaking engagements, is that's one of the great things about being CALEA certified, because you have to have policies and procedures in place on just about everything you do. But here it's setting guidelines. So just because we have policies and procedures that says if you do anything personal with that, then then you're going to be terminated. You could be charged criminally depending on what you're doing. Because if you're using it to stalk somebody, then you're in violation of criminal laws. So those things that we have right there, those are the important things that we have. And there's a lot of agencies that don't have those, or they might have put it in place and never thought about, hey, we need a policy and procedure. And then somebody, now we got somebody that's violating, a law if they're harassing somebody or tracking somebody or, using it for something other than legal reasons. And I think that's where we have, as a law enforcement agency, we all have to be on the same page. I think every law enforcement agency should have to be accredited through CALEA. There shouldn't be an agency out there. But I also thought that no officer should ever be on the streets until they've been through the academy. so that was and a lot of small towns got very upset with me about that, because a lot of them would bring officers in and they would police for a year, and they had up to a year to police just like a normal police officer until they went to the academy. And I just thought, how unfair is that to that officer, for one, and how unfair is it to the citizens that they're there to protect? Because you never stop learning in this job, but I consider everybody a rookie officer until they've had like 5 years in, because it's not like going to work at McDonald's or somewhere like that, where you learn this fry machine in 2 hours, you're doing fries. It's not like that, and it can't be like that. We have to have good officers with good training, with
I
good
imagine
common
the
sense.
psychology, we talk about the muscle and the brawn and being able to handle a gun, but, any of the TV shows I watch, it's a lot of psychology.
Yeah, and that's probably that's why they all have to have psychology tests. They have to all speak to the person. And even after, like when we had the tragic event with DJ, people had to sit down and manually talk to mental health counselors, had to understand it. And it was important for them, even though they might not, because a lot of police officers are alpha personalities. So they're, I'll be all right. I've been, and most of them's been to Afghanistan, been to Iraq, been to somewhere like that. So they're like, I've been to Iraq and I've done this. And I'm like, yeah, well, I've been to Afghanistan too. But listen, we got to sit down. You got to talk to these people, and just you and them. Nobody knows. You just need to make sure you're able to do that. And we make it mandatory, so they don't have a choice. So then it's not like other officers saying, you went and spoke to the cuckoo doctor. We just, it's not about that. And they rip each other all the time. And I think that's what makes law enforcement is such a close-knit family is because when you're in dire need of help, you're getting on that radio, and when those sirens are coming, as a person who's been there, and I know I don't look like it now, Miss Ann, but don't let the belly fool you. I still got it. I still got it.
You can still bring it on.
I can still
bring it.
I can still come and get it. But no, I think that when you've been in that and that person's pulled up there and gotten you out of that situation, it makes you really think how important it is. And that's why it's important for me to make sure that we're hiring the right people, the people that's going to be able to handle that, the people that's going to be able to do the right things.
How is hiring? How is your police staff right now?
Well, we got a couple openings. I think 4 openings is what we currently have. We currently have 3 that's going through the hiring process. One of those, I think it just got removed from the hiring process because something come back in the background. But it's going real slow. This year has been worse than last year for us, which was kind of weird because I thought we would have a lot more applications because you're starting to get more pro police stuff going on out there. So, and when that increases, well, so does your applications increase. Sure. But we're also not seeing what we used to see. You seen dad was a police officer, kids a police officer, grandkids police officer, and you're really not seeing that. That's really starting to stop. You're not anywhere close to seeing parents was a police officer. Now the kids are police officers. That part has really cut off, and that hurts us a lot. But our best recruiting tool is our officers from the inside. Most officers we hire come from somebody on the inside already knowing them and saying, "Hey, this person's a good guy," and so we bring them on and give them a shot. But we've had the officers who started, went through the academy, came out, and within a week say, "This ain't for me." This ain't for me. After going through the academy. Yeah. Because it's different when you see that first dead person, or you pull up on that first scene and there's 40 people fighting and everybody's looking for you to stop it. And then when you're trying to stop it, then everybody gets mad at you, and start yelling and screaming and hollering. So you are responsible.
Do you think officers worry more about somebody having a gun, pulling a gun? I mean, I would think that would be more of an issue today than it was 20 years ago.
Way more. In my career, when I first started, you didn't get very many people with guns. Matter of fact, we got more people with knives than you did guns. But nowadays, I would guess probably more than 50% of the people we come in contact with has a gun on them. And these are good citizens too that absolutely has the right to. But you have a lot more people carrying a firearm now than what I feel like we've ever had in the past.
Yeah. So I think that's a little more, makes you worry a little bit more. Now, we've seen a lot on social media.
Woo, boy, have we.
I mean, unfortunately, it spreads. It can have good information out there, but it can also spread a lot of misinformation. And how does the department deal with false rumors? Do you just let them go, or how do you deal with it?
Well, a lot of times I lose most of my hair, so most of that's gone. I think it's just one of those things that you have the same group that's going out there that's trying to spread stuff or spreading what they know. And one of the interesting facts is, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. A former employee of the Greenwood City Police Department who got released from his duties at the Greenwood Police Department is upset with the police department. So he's working, he's feeding off another person for political reasons, wants to advance his political campaign, so he figures he'll bash the police department. But what's funny is the stuff that they spread is not true or don't have all the facts in it, or some of it's just flat out lies. But none of them's ever came to me and said, "Hey, Chief, I just want to, this is what I heard. This is what I heard happen. Is there a reason that this happened?" And even though I've told most people on there, man, you can call me anytime. I'll answer any questions you got. I don't have anything to hide. In reality, no one's ever contacted me to ask me about any of those rumors or to ask me, "Hey, is this true or is it something, that's not true?" And I won't get into the details about the ex-officer because there's a SLED investigation going on. But, those, it's just people who I think their life's miserable and they want everybody else to be miserable too. I really feel like that. I feel like they're like.
Do you think that there are things actually being, I'm going to use the word, covered up in the police department?
No. And where people get confused is like one of the things that was spread out there was a mailing slip about a Mustang that we bought. And I don't know if you've seen it or not. You've seen it. Yep. So first of all, the city of Greenwood, if somebody purchases anything, it goes through like 5 people. So when let's say in that case, Lovett and McAllister purchase a vehicle, it has to come to me and I have to approve it. They just can't buy anything like that. It has to come through me. It comes through me, then it goes to finance. Finance then has to approve it. Then it has to go to the city manager, and then the city manager has to approve it. So before anything's ever purchased, it goes through all these people. 2 is, all you hear them say is, look at our tax dollars being spent. It was a buy it now. Y'all paid, the car was well worth that. We bought the car, buy it now. But it was all bought from drug forfeiture money. It didn't cost the taxpayers a dime. That car right now has been to more shows, and we get more people coming up because there's so many guys that are car guys. And I'm not one, so I can't tell you about the motor and I can't tell you about everything else. But if you look at that car, it has Pacific graphics on it. It has UCR codes on it, so people can just click it and it tells them this vehicle was bought in Florida. This was bought from drug forfeiture money. This is when it came to the police department. And if somebody really wanted not to spread rumors and be truthful, all they had to do is pick up the phone and say, hey, Chief, I got this thing saying that y'all got something. Y'all had something reported to something sent to somebody's house. And I said, oh, yeah, this is the whole process. This is what it takes. This is what we did. This is how we got the money, drug forfeiture money that it was paid for. This is why we paid for it. It's a recruiting tool that we use. If you look at any agency that's a large agency like ours, you're going to see the same thing. Greenville, Spartanburg, every one of them's got the same Mustang.
Well, my question is, were you saving any money by buying this vehicle?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Because when we were looking at purchasing a new one, because that's what we was going to do, and then we found this one, and it was just, and people say, well, buy it now. It was at $17,000. It still had a long ways to go, and it would have been, it could have got up there higher, and we didn't want somebody to buy the vehicle out from under us because we'd already been looking for one. And I can pay $33,000 for this one, which has all the bells and whistles, or I can go buy a brand new one that don't have bells and whistles and pay $80,000 and then bring it in and then put the bells and whistles on it that we're needing to make it sound a certain way that people come up and ask questions about it. Because that's how you get people recruited is you want to start that conversation with people. And like the Festival of Discovery, I told them, we put the car up there for 12 hours and I said, I want to record every person that comes up and asks about the car. 24 people came in that matter of time asking about the car, asking to start the car, asking to set in the car. And those are good recruiting tools for us, especially when it's young men that's car enthusiasts. And we're like, yeah, see,
Yeah,
now,
but did they get the car?
You don't get the car. It takes a long
That's what I'm asking.
It takes a long time for them to get that car.
Right.
And that car is not meant for patrol. It's not meant to, for anything other than anytime we have a recruiting event, we take that car there, and it's a part of our officers. They can turn on the lights. It's got extra lights on it that makes it even more flashy. It's got special graphics on it that's not our normal graphics. We call them ghost graphics, just so people will be, oh, wow, and it starts a conversation. So it has, even if people not interested in law enforcement.
So you're saying it's a recruiting
It's
tool.
definitely a recruiting car. And you'll see most of them now, even the Highway Patrol, their cars that they have, their Mustangs, they're not part of the fleet. They take them to recruiting classes. They take them to other places. So it's just a way to get people's attention to say, oh, wow, look at that. And then one day, if you start with the police department, you come to the police department, maybe you'll do enough time and do a good enough job that maybe you'll get that car.
Maybe you ask for it when you first come.
Yeah, well, you won't get it. I can't give it to you then. But,
okay, all right. Well, let's see. We've got a lot of questions coming in here. So are you ready? Are you ready?
Oh yeah.
First off, let me just go through the ones we've got on Facebook Live. Jennifer says she wants justice for DJ. We all want justice for DJ. Judy Davis says thank you for serving and making it a safer place. You are very much appreciated. Well, there you go. Now we'll go for the rest of the questions.
Yeah, now let's get the ones who don't like me.
Okay. Brandon says, how can we get a vote on the ballot to keep or get rid of flock cameras?
Yeah. Well, I mean, technically, City Council can absolutely say we're not going to give them flock cameras. We have a contract there. So the flock cameras, and the reason we do a contract and we don't own the flock cameras is because we're not responsible if anything tears up. We're not responsible for anything that goes down. There's no maintenance fee for us. So we pay for each individual contract that we have on each camera, and we got a contract a long time ago, so it's a little bit more expensive now than what it was then. It is $2,500 a year for each camera that we have, But that's
so it's like a service
it's a service contract, and but all the data and everything's ours. And to be 100% honest, I know citizens, might not like them, but it's such a great tool. And council gets a report every month of a report that we send out about cases that we worked and solved on Flock. So they're well aware of what Flock does for us and how that. I spoke in favor of Flock. I wasn't the chief at the time, but I spoke in favor of Flock when we first tried to get them. And same way now. I'll still speak in favor of them. As long as it's done correctly, you got good policies and procedures, and and it's not pointed anywhere other than a regular.
Well, now that leads me to a question, because it says, also, can we get clarification on Flock cameras? He stated it only takes pictures of tags. But you said you can search my color and model of car.
Yes.
So explain that.
So the picture is still of the back of the car, right? So when it takes a picture, it's taking a picture of as a tag comes through. Now, a car can come through there with no tag. So you could actually get on Flock and somebody say, hey, we just had a shooting over here. I looked, the car didn't have tags. So you could run cars that has no tags, and it would still show you, because every time a car comes through, it takes a picture of the car. But it's taking a picture of the back of the car. It's not taking a picture of the front of the car. So whenever you see the Flock camera and which way it's pointed, it's not taking pictures of cars coming towards them. It's taking pictures of cars as they pass them going away. So you might have a Flock camera on a 2-lane road, but it's only picking up the cars going the one way that it's pointed.
And so then it would actually pick up some of the color of the vehicle.
Yes. Oh, yes.
It's not
yes.
just because I think you did state it was like of the license plate.
Yes. So the license plate's always included at the back of the car. That's where it takes the picture. But it takes a picture of the car. Sometimes you get half the car. Sometimes you get the back of the car. Sometimes, depending on where the picture snaps, you might get most of the car. Usually you don't get the whole car. Usually you just get a portion of the back of the car.
And so it would potentially tell you what type of car it is.
Yes.
Because it's got a thing on it. You're not interpreting it.
No, you can. It's actually got a program listed in it. So if you had an incident occur, and it was, let's say, something that happened. For example, we had all the equipment get stolen, and we ran the type of vehicle that somebody said it was, the truck that pulled it off, and that's how we got that one back, and so quick. And it hit on the first Flock camera that came out of where the area was taken from. So, and I understand people's concern. I absolutely 100% understand that.
Yeah, because you might not be doing anything bad, but you might get accused.
Well, you won't get accused, because if you ain't got nothing to hide, you probably never going to hear from us. And the chances of us even looking at your car are slim to none.
Yeah, I know. You wouldn't look at my car. Yeah, I agree. What another question came in is, what is the department doing differently in high-speed chase? I have no idea what this question means.
Well, I mean, there's still policy and guidelines, and again, it goes back to.
Oh, you're talking about DJ. This is maybe where this is coming from.
Oh, are they talking about?
I don't know. It just, what is the department doing differently in high-speed chase?
We still have the same policies and procedures. There's nothing different than we're doing that from when DJ got violently struck by another vehicle that was running from another officer. It always depends on the reasoning why we're stopping the vehicle. This vehicle was involved in what we know several shootings, so we needed to identify the people in the vehicle.
How come, just out of curiosity on that case, how come did you wait? I mean, you knew this vehicle, you were looking for this vehicle.
Correct.
This is for the DJ Keller one we're talking about.
Correct.
How come you... It had tags, right? It had the location where it was located.
Correct.
Can you just explain that piece to us?
So the people that were in the car was different people each time. We dealt with this car a couple of different times.
Okay.
So what we found out from the investigation is the girl was loaning the vehicle to people. Mm-hmm. And those people were committing crimes. So we wanted to catch the vehicle with the suspects in it and not with her in it. We'd already pulled the car over with her in it. And of course, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know, this. I don't know that. I have no idea, So you really want to get the bad guys in there. So when the officer seen the vehicle and it was occupied by young males, that was what we were looking for, that we knew were involved in these shootings, then that's when the traffic stop initiated.
Yeah. Okay. I just was curious, because if you knew what vehicle it was, I didn't understand, but...
Yeah, if we knew, we already knew it was hers, and we knew the vehicle, the people that were using the vehicle to do crime, the shootings that we were experiencing, those people were not associated with that car, because And we, like I said, we pulled it over a couple of different times. It ran from us before. It ran from the county before. So they'd already been in a high-speed chase with it. It was different people than was in it this time. But we had pulled the car over, and she was in the car before, so we knew it was her car, and we wasn't getting no cooperation from her to help us out about, hey, they're using your car to commit violent crimes. And that's one of the reasons she was charged, and we pushed so highly for her to stay in jail.
Yeah, okay. All right, now we had another question. Let's see. How can citizens best stay informed about property and violent crimes occurring in the county? With reduced media coverage for this area, it's important to understand what is happening in real time, and social media is unreliable at best.
Well, and this is the best thing that I can tell people, especially if you're part of a neighborhood watch program. So one of the neighborhoods I meet with every month is the Pelzer Street community, the Mill Village over there. I meet with them every month, and we go over every call that's happened in their neighborhood. And I'll do that for anybody. So regardless, now if you live in the county, I can't help you there. But if you live in the city limits and you're part of a neighborhood, I'll set you on my calendar for once a month for you to come up, and we'll talk about all the different calls that we went to in your neighborhood. And I think that's the best way. Now, it's also important to make sure you're following when they release the crime statistics for the year, because where people kind of get confused is if you watch those SLED crime statistics, not only does it show you the type of crime that we had, but it also shows you the amount of crime we're solving from those. So larceny is always our biggest thing, right? Because people pull on car doors and people steal, shoplifting. There's a lot of stuff that falls under theft, So larceny is always one of the biggest ones. So you can look at that from the previous years and see where we were at then for both Greenwood City and Greenwood County, because there's a difference. They do a county one that's all crime in Greenwood County. Then they break it down by the Greenwood Sheriff's Department, and they break it down by the city of Greenwood, 96, where it shows that type. So it's important to make sure you're following that and that you're following up on, and every one of those from, I think, 2018.
I think the question is, when something happens in our community, TJ, and it's bad. Yeah. It's bad, and everybody is just like, what's happening? And all you're getting are these quick social media blips, and they may be true, they may not be true. Yeah. How can the folks be aware of what's happening? If it's something serious, do we need to be locking ourselves inside? Is there somebody on the loose? I mean, these are the things that I think everybody is real concerned about. Yeah. And sometimes it seems from the police department and from the sheriff's department, as well as that goes, that we don't get real information, or we get such tepid amount of information that it does us no good.
Yeah, and I think we can do a better job of some of that. Anytime that there is a 100% threat to society, our policy is we release something immediately. But there's sometimes we have crime that we don't release because we have good leads or we have something else that's going on. For example, if there was a drive-by shooting and we got the car and we know what kind of car it was and we know where that car is at, we don't release that information. We don't release anything until we're able to make contact with the owner of that vehicle, because hopefully the person's still in the vehicle. So we don't want to release, we're looking for a blue car with these tags, those type of things. But if it's an incident that immediately has danger to the public, for example, if we had an active shooter situation, those would be released immediately. We do not do a great job of reporting everything that we have, and that's obvious because this year so far I think we've had 18,000 calls for service, and we've arrested like 1,500 people. So, and no one knows about any of those unless you follow the arrest log, and then you don't know details, you just know what they were charged with. And used to, you would have a lot of local agencies would come over and they would get the daily what I call incident reports, and they would look at the daily incident reports and they would find the ones that they wanted to write on. So they'd write a little column on. So much stuff now is just misinformation. But we try not to do anything that is going to interfere with the case. And a lot of times we get a lot of, I used to do the Chief's Corner where I would talk about cases and a lot of stuff. And I always got a lot of slack from solicitors and other people. We don't want to release that information, but it is the people's right to know. They have a right to know what's going on in their community.
Right.
So that's important for me. But I also see what they're saying is they don't want to taint a jury. They don't, the jury pool's already real slim. So they don't want to taint a jury. They don't want a jury to know about information and have to do all
Where
that.
do you divide between the public's right to know and having a jury trial? I mean, in truth, a jury can always be moved, right? I mean, in truth.
It can if a judge, they would have to ask for a change of venue and the judge would have to approve it.
Right.
It definitely could. And usually the only time that's going to happen if it's something like a Murdaugh case where it's so big,
Right.
that no matter where you go, you're going to have jury that's going to know about the case. I think a lot of people, a lot of times we have a shooting. These are people that know each other. And a lot of times our victims are the same person that was involved in another shooting. So it's kind of a retaliatory type shooting. We don't, knock on wood, thank goodness, we don't have those, random people getting shot. We've had them, we had a shooting that happened at Uptown Grill. The young lady was in there. Absolutely had nothing to do, nothing. She was in there with a friend, and unfortunately, she got caught by a stray bullet, which is also why it's important to make sure that we're taking these people off the highways and the roads. But those type of crimes, we really don't release a whole lot because, one, is we don't want people to tell family members before we are able to get with them and tell them, especially if it's a death. Because I've been on plenty of those scenes, and it gets chaotic when you have those scenes and you have family that show up and they want to know what's going on, and we're trying to get all the evidence because they know their loved one's still in there. They just don't know why their loved one's in there or whether or not their loved one's coming out. But there's a lot of evidence that has to be gathered. There's a lot of ballistics has to be gathered. So it just depends, and I do think that as any law enforcement agency, we could do a better job of putting a little bit more out there. A lot of times, and what I told you earlier is we just now, the city of Greenwood has agreed, we've hired a public information officer. The counties have one. Abby Banks is their public information officer. And we just hired Stephanie, who we're hoping is going to help us with that and help us be able to push it out. Because when I go to a scene like that, a shooting scene or a bad scene, I'm there, but I'm also, as much as I am there as chief and to talk to the media, my first priority is to make sure we're doing everything we're supposed to. Even though I have good majors and I have good, detectives and all that, I still have to make sure, because at the end of the day, it's like anything. It always comes back on the chief, So I want to make sure we're doing everything and we're doing what we have to do for the family to make sure the case is taken care of. So I think it's just a twofold question, and it can go either way. But I do think we could do a little bit better with releasing some information, especially instead of just letting stuff go. I think social media has gotten out of hand with that because, you also post something about, for example, the prostitution, the lady who got arrested for prostitution.
Yeah, you guys were observing that for a month.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Yeah,
I thought,
well,
what was going on over there,
Yeah,
Chief?
so, she was definitely doing massages, but they were a little bit more in detail than what she was supposed to be doing. Right. So in those cases, we didn't release the information right away. One is because we didn't want people to know that we were watching the place, but two, we also believed that was a part of trafficking. So because the girl that we arrested, the older lady that was there, she actually was 2 weeks prior to that was in Anderson and then in Greenville, and then she was here for a couple of weeks, and she got caught up in the sting that we did where the undercover went in and done the sting. So, but you'll see people, they always got something crazy to say. So, and that's the bad thing about social media, because people have the right to express themselves. We don't delete comments unless it's something vulgar or insulting or race baiting to usually another person. But, so you get a lot of comments on there and you just shake your head sometimes. But yeah, I think we can do a better job, and hopefully with the hiring of Stephanie and her being the new public information officer, we're going to be able to get more stuff out there a little bit quicker than what we are.
I think quicker is
quicker is the biggest thing.
Yes.
And like I said, if it's something absolutely 100% where the public's in danger, it will be released immediately before any information. It'll be released as Greenwood City Police Department's in this location. We're looking for an active shooter. Everybody in this area needs to be aware, and he'll give a description of the actual, even though we don't know all the details, but that's important to get out to the community, because then it lets us know we actually have a threat to community, not a individual incident that was between two individuals.
Okay. All right. Well, believe it or not, it's 6:07 in the evening.
Oh my goodness.
We have talked right through here, and I think that's great. I have kind of a question coming
Sure.
here. What is the policy and procedure for officers threatening people on social media?
So it's a violation of policy, and they will do discipline. You can't do that. I can tell you probably where that's coming from, and I can probably even tell you who sent that, because it's one of our usuals. But yeah, we had an incident where we had an officer get into it with a civilian. The civilian sent something, and as a police officer, even me, and it's like I said when we first started, it's hard for me to see them say stuff about my officers and I know the truth, and it's hard for me to sit back and not say something. And unfortunately, the officer that was involved in this, he didn't hold back, and he did say something, and that officer was in discipline, and it cost him a pretty good bit. We don't discuss the discipline that we give officers, but again, we have, and the funny thing about the same person that's probably complaining about that is he asked me a couple weeks prior to this if I would lower the standards to become a police officer so we could hire more officers. And I, of course, said absolutely not. But those are the things that happen, that they just like to throw stuff out there, and they like to, was the officer wrong? Absolutely, the officer was wrong. I called the person that was part of that and personally apologized, because I'm the chief of police and that's my job. I also informed him that what the officer did was wrong, and it was dealt with, and the officer was disciplined. I don't tell him what the discipline is, because we don't do that. No police agency does. But the officer was disciplined, and it cost him, and I think he learned a valuable lesson from it. So
withholding officers need to withhold temptation, but it's hard.
It's hard.
It's very hard.
When you got somebody out there that's down in your department, and like I said, these officers, they love Greenwood, and they love what they do, and they love our department. And when you see people out there spreading lies and spreading misinformation and calling officers names and all this other stuff, I mean, it's hard, and luckily we've only had one incident where we've had to deal with an officer doing that. But people get tired of people bashing them. And I will say this, all these people who write all those negative comments, I've never seen them one time put in an application for the Greenwood City Police Department. So if you want to make a change, make a difference, come on up there. We're hiring. We have, 4 openings. Come on up. If you have the know-how of how to do it better than what we're doing, come on up. We'll put you through the process.
Absolutely. Well, Penny has a question for you tonight.
I love Penny.
Okay. She wants to ask you one question. She goes, Chief, what kind of kindness from a Greenwood citizen that you or one of your officers has received that you'll never forget? An act of kindness.
I think there's so many. I'll just reach out the one that I just had here recently. A lady called me and said, I just want to tell you that me and my husband were an elderly couple, but they had purchased an item and they were trying to get it out of the truck and get it into the house. And it was him and her. And the officer was driving by. The officer stopped, got out of the car. Sir, let me help you with that. Ma'am, let me help you. And he helped them carry it and get it into the house and get it set up and put where they wanted it put. He didn't have to. He just seen, oh, look, this is something I need to do. Yeah. And those are the type of people we have to deal with. And people don't realize I get as few complaints as I get almost daily of somebody calling saying, I just want to thank you. This officer pulled me over. Yeah, he wrote me a ticket, but the way he treated me and the professionalism he showed, I was in the wrong. And I just want to let you know that this officer did a great job. And sometimes we'll see it ourselves, because even that officer, he doesn't come by and say, hey, I just stopped by and helped these people. These are citizens. So I think about all the ones that people don't call and tell us, how kindness they were. But for me personally, it's tough, because, I've been into, I've held hands with people that were at the end of their life, and those are always tough situations, because you want to tell them everything's going to be all right, but you've been on enough of those calls to know that they're not going to be all right. And it's the same way with family. What do you tell a family that their loved one's never coming home? They're not going to be there for Christmas. That's the hardest part. But our officers do all kinds of kindness. They're always trying to do something for the betterment of people. It's not about always putting somebody in jail. Now, some people need to go to jail, and that's where they need to be, but it's not always about that. And a lot of times, it's the last part of that's actually the part. It's the part of, can I get them to a rehab place? Can I get them to a bus station because they got stranded in Greenwood and they got to get back to Idaho? Who can I work with in our community to help us get them on the bus? It's the same way with one of my officers a month ago, got a call a woman had lost her wallet in Publix. Officer responded to Publix. She had all of her groceries sitting there. She had lost her wallet in there. Somebody had already taken her wallet, had found it and taken it, and they was already actively using it. So she had called the police. She lost her wallet. The officer took it out of his own money, out of his own wallet, and paid for her groceries. Since she had already had them up there and they'd already rung them up, paid for her groceries.
Oh, my God.
And then went and took it and helped her put it in the car. And now she came back, and of course she paid him back and all that, and did everything she could. The officer wouldn't take it, but those are the type of people we want to be police officers. But they never get acknowledged for that because we don't post stuff like that on social media. We don't post, data boys and stuff like that. We simply keep that. We simply keep that in house, and I thank them for the great job and the way they represented me and our police department, and we kind of just move from there.
Well, I think those are terrific comments. So, final takeaway. If our listeners remember just one thing from today's conversation, what would you hope they would take away about the Greenwood Police Department?
I think the most important part for me is, one, is if you have questions about anything we do, my office is always open. Please come up and see me. If you have information about your neighborhood and the type of crime that's being seen in your neighborhood, come see me. We can sit down like I do with the other Mill Village, and I can go over the different calls that we see there. But I think us having an open communication with the community, and the community being able to reach out and directly be in contact with me, our chief deputy, our majors, being able to do that is probably one of the most important things. You don't have to go through 15 people to see me. If you need to see me, then you come up and see me. Everybody knows there's probably not anybody out there that don't have my cell phone number. I give it at every event that I'm at. So you
want to give them right now?
Yeah, it's 864-992-7304. And, and that's just who I am. I work for the people, and I work for our community. And I think that's the biggest thing. If you have any questions, just reach out to us and call us. Don't believe everything you see for people trying to do stuff for their political gain and all this other BS.
I understand. Well, I do think it's always good to go to the source, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
It is. And if you can get to the source, and what we're seeing on social media right now is kind of a disgrace.
Yeah, it's just, it's people that, and I told you this before, that I think it's people that's miserable in life and want to make everybody else miserable. My grandma said one time to me, she said, it's always matter who you hang out with, because all criminals hang out together. So that's the way I look at it, and that's just the way it is.
There's another one. If you lay down with dogs, you're going to get up with fleas.
Absolutely, unless it's Penny, because Penny don't have fleas.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, TJ, it's been too long, but I'm glad we were able to sit down and talk about this. We've had a lot of engagement here today. Thank you so much for coming out.
It's always an honor to be on here, Miss Ann.
Well, thank you so much. If you didn't get to see all of it here today, you can certainly go back and watch it right here on Facebook, and it will be on our website, WCRS1450am.net, and we now are on A Girl and Her Mic is on Spotify and on iTunes, so check it out there. Thanks so much, TJ,
God
for
bless
coming
you.
in, and I am Ann Eller, and Penny, are you ready to eat? Yes, I'm ready to eat. So we're going to close it down right here on WCRS. I will be back in the morning, so make sure you tune us in 9:30 in the morning. I'll be here. Hope to see you there. Bye-bye, everybody.
All right.